we got some devastating news for Florida State in their game, their senior night game against North Alabama. Jordan Travis went down with a season-ending leg injury. It sucks. It absolutely is the worst news, not just for Florida State, but for college football fans, right? I have derided Florida State for its schedule, and I stick to that. However, run through this undefeated. You beat Louisville in the ACC title game. You're going to get into the college football playoff, Tate Roadmaker or not, right? I believe that the college football playoff should do for Florida State what it did for Texas. You'll remember Quinn Ewers goes down with the shoulder injury. The next week, the college football playoff comes out with its rankings. They still have Texas at 7 ahead of Alabama. Now, do we think that Malik Murphy goes into Tuscaloosa and beats Alabama? Probably not. Do we think that Quinn Ewers makes them the number 7 team in the country? Probably yes. And yet, we got to see them hold still with Quinn Ewers not playing. Florida State is within its rights and expectations to expect not to move any further down than 5 because their quarterback suffered a season-ending injury. And I'm really going to watch this closely because they're already proven to be hypocritical on that committee, docking Ohio State for nothing really. If you're going to rank them at 1, what have they done to not be ranked 1? You're going, well, Georgia's been more dominant. Well, they've been dominant all year. They had more ranked wins than Ohio State going into that. We're looking at resumes here. Yeah, okay, that's fine, but that's not what you're doing here. You are making up a rubric that you can't even stick to. And that's the first rule of making these top 25s, guys. You have to establish for the audience and for yourself, what is the criteria? And you have to stick to that, right? If you win head-to-heads, that ought to matter. If you play more opponents that have numbers next to their names than someone else who's got the same amount of wins, that needs to matter too. I've had Washington in this 4 spot the whole time. I'm glad to see the AP voters finally have caught up to this. Maybe it was just watching the primetime game and seeing how that Washington team stood up against what we all know was a good Oregon State team. I also am looking at this going, if you're Florida State, okay, what did we do wrong? We went and won a game that we were supposed to win because the starting quarterback was out? No, look, I think we're going to settle this in conference championship weekend, frankly. And if both of those teams win, they ought to get in. And I don't think that the loser of the game should get in. But we've seen what this committee will do. This committee will put both Ohio State and Michigan into the college football playoff if they think that the loser of that game is still one of the 4 best teams in the sport. I don't like it. I don't think it's fair. But, this is the sport, right? One of the things that Producer Cat really helped me understand when I got into this job is you can't talk about it like you want it to be. You have to talk about it the way that it is, right? And the way that it is, Ohio State and Michigan run a lot of this sport. And if they play each other close, might be that the Florida State ACC champ needs to blow out Louisville to get that thing. And if Louisville wins that game, they'll go, what did we do wrong? How aren't we into this thing? So forth and so on. So I think that if you are very honest about your criteria and you stick to it and you're the committee, yeah, okay, you provide yourself a level of cover. But if you're doing what you're doing now, like moving Missouri into the top 10, basically because they beat up on Tennessee, a Tennessee that Georgia, frankly, didn't beat up as badly, okay, then what are we doing here? It's almost as if they care more about the SEC than they do any other conference. And they care about Ohio State and Michigan the way they care about Georgia and Alabama, not to say they care about the Big Ten the way they care about the SEC. It's nice to see Toledo getting in here. They're 10-1 with an opportunity to win the MAC championships against 9-2 Miami of Ohio. It's a good football team over there. Jason Candle's probably going to get some looks for another head coaching job. I like seeing Tulane staying put for 18 for me, 18 for them. I think they're in a spot right now where they could get into the Group of 5 bowl, but like the New Year's Six bowl were the Group of 5 team. And quiet as it is kept, UNLV has been playing outstanding football in the Mountain West. Shout out to former classmate at the University of Tulsa and great wide receiver Brendan Marion, whose go-go offense is absolutely putting in and doing work out there in Vegas. I'm really fascinated to find out why Tennessee gets to stay in the top 25. I don't understand. I don't get it. I would love for an AP voter to explain to me why Tennessee is one of the 25 best teams in the sport when they just got beat down 2 times by Missouri and Georgia back-to-back weeks and dropped the game to a Florida team that ain't no good, okay? To speak of Missouri not being no good, the backup quarterback Florida nearly handed you your head. And if we're talking about a Florida secondary that cared to cover Luther Burden, maybe Florida goes against that upset. But as it stood, I got to applaud Eli Drinkwitz. He said, hey, who's the best player we got on the team? Is it Luther Burden? Cool. Let's throw it up to him and see what happens. And you know what? It worked for them. So I'm for that. I like it when people go with the smart play, and that works out for them. On the other hand, if you're Florida, you got to go, hey, how do we leave this dude buck naked open? And then how do we let them get into position for somebody who deigns to go by the thicker kicker to gator chomp on us? Look, man, the gator chomp's getting out of control. You used to just didn't do that because Florida used to take that so personally and would let you know the next year. Now you got the Missouri kicker chomping on you. You got the Missouri kicker chomping on you so bad that you got folks in Arkansas beside themselves about Sam Pittman and Aggieville, not Aggieville, but College Station. Aggieville's in Manhattan. And College Station going, how are we behind Missouri? This can't stand, bro. This will not stand, bro. Like, real dude vibes over here. But I'm really interested to see how this goes the rest of the way because there's some Big 12 teams in here that we got to talk about. And that's really the most fascinating part of this weekend, honestly. Outside of Ohio State and Michigan, which is the game and the one that everybody's going to watch, that game might actually pull 15 million viewers. I understand some of y'all don't care, but I absolutely care how many people watch a college football game because it tells me who people think is interesting, right? And important. But looking at this Big 12, let's say scenarios, it's very simple if you're Texas, right? At number 7. Get into the Big 12 championship game. Hope that Oklahoma gets there so you can avenge the one loss that you took this season and maybe give the committee something to think about, or put yourself sitting pretty if Florida State blows it against Louisville, or maybe even if Washington blows it against Oregon, though Oregon probably might sort of get into your spot because they're 6. You know what I'm saying? You got to hope that Georgia dispatches Alabama because I don't think that an Alabama team that beats Georgia for the SEC title not getting in the college football playoff. Another conference that could absolutely get 2 teams into the playoff once again. Oklahoma State 6-2, Oklahoma 6-2, Kansas State 6-2. That's where I cut off, right? Because I think those are the 4 teams that could play in the Big 12 championship in the most likely scenarios. And we're going to get to find out real quick if Oklahoma's got a shot because they got Texas Christian at home on Friday, and then Texas Tech is at Texas at home, at Texas on Friday too. So we'll get some answers there before Saturday about what needs to happen on Saturday to fill out the field. But let's start with the scenario so that everybody's on the same page as we go into this weekend. So Texas is first in the Big 12 with a win this weekend, full stop. They're first with a loss though, from Oklahoma and Oklahoma State, right? They're first with a loss for Oklahoma. If they win, Oklahoma State wins, Kansas State wins, right? So basically, the only way they finish second is if they lose to Texas Tech and Oklahoma State loses their game against BYU. BYU all of a sudden looking plucky, by the way. Kansas State would finish second with a win. Oklahoma State loss and an Oklahoma loss. So they need both the Oklahoma teams to lose and they need to win. They'd also finish second with an Oklahoma win, an Oklahoma State win, and a Texas loss. Right? So Kansas State absolutely has something to play for against Iowa State on Saturday. That game is in Manhattan. Oklahoma State would finish first in the Big 12 conference with a win, a Texas loss, and an Oklahoma loss. So they need the OU Texas teams to lose, and they need to win to finish first, right? They'd also finish first with Oklahoma winning and Texas losing and Kansas State losing, right? They finished second, though, with a win and a Texas win. They finished second with a loss, a Texas win, and an Oklahoma loss, and they finished second with a loss, an Oklahoma loss, and a Kansas State loss. A lot of moving and shaking in there, but basically Oklahoma State and Texas win your football games, and things are probably going to go your way. And as far as getting into the Big 12 championship game. And then finally, my Oklahoma Sooners, they need to win first and foremost against Texas Christian. They get to 10 wins. That'd be great, especially after last year going 6-7. Remarkable turnaround for Brent Venables, no matter what you think of how the team has played this year. That's been phenomenal. I've been very pleased with that. So they finished first in the Big 12 with a win and a Texas loss and Oklahoma State loss. I don't think that that's likely, but it's on the table for them. They could finish second with a win and a Texas win and an Oklahoma State loss, right? And they finished second with a win, a Texas loss, an Oklahoma State win, and a Kansas State loss. So their best bet is to hope that perhaps BYU gets on its horse and does for Oklahoma what Utah did for Ryan Day and Ohio State last year to get them into the playoff. You're going to need some help here, right? The only person that gets to say what goes on is Texas. Everybody else is going to need some help to get into this thing, but those are 4 teams that all deserve, frankly, to play in the Big 12 championship game and should make one really thrilling. But if you're Texas, you got to be rooting for Oklahoma this weekend because they are the team for which you are being compared to, and they are the team that I think gives you the best opportunity to present a really great win to the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. And in that way, you get to make the college football playoff the way that Oklahoma did in 2018. You'll remember, Kyler Murray not only won the Heisman over Texas' dead body in the Big 12 championship game, but got into the college football playoff because of that win and that weekend. That was really outstanding. I know that Texas would love nothing more than to be able to return that favor at AT&T Stadium in Dallas on December 2nd. Going to be a lot of fun. So we'll be watching all of those games going into this weekend. We'll talk about them on Saturday after the live tailgate event, for which I will be in Los Angeles in studio to recap the day and get you set up for conference championship Saturday rankings and what needs to happen in those games. Finally, let's go out with a segment that we really haven't been able to do a whole lot this season. But hey, November gives us. It's awesome when it happens because check it. We're going to do some money in the bag. Look. It's not just that New Mexico State whooped Auburn 31-10 at Jordan Air in Auburn, Alabama. It's that the Tigers paid $1.85 million for the privilege. Auburn, I said you've been had. I said you've been took. I said you've been hoodwinked, bamboozled, run astray, run amok. This is what he does. New Mexico State put the shimmy in the shag. War, damn, Eagle. Put the money in the bag. Man, now we got to talk about Liberty, perhaps going undefeated with a win against New Mexico State, and then winning a bowl game and absolutely hanging the banner in Lynchburg, Virginia. This is what you did, New Mexico State, or this is what you did, Auburn. And shout out to Brian Harsin, who was a lot of things, but never lost to New Mexico State at home. If you like what you've seen, consider subscribing to the #1 college football show on YouTube, the Fox Sports app, or wherever you get your podcast.